Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. I'm Louis Karpas. I guess you know who you are. You should. And we're well and truly into the end part of the South African cricket season, moved into the IPL. And we welcome for the first time on the program Dinesha Devnarain, the women's under-19 coach of the Proteas and also Women's National Academy head coach. Dinesha, welcome to the program for the first time and thank you for your time.
Hi, Louis. Yeah, thank you so much. I think I make my debut today.
You do?
Hopefully we can have a lot more.
We certainly do, and I can promise you you'll get off the mark quite easily. Just stroke one through the covers. My bowling is not so great anymore. It used to be a bit better than it is right now, but I'm sure you'll get off the mark pretty quickly. Just don't ask me for a quick run because I'm not so good between the wickets. Ladies cricket, under 19 cricket, it has blossomed, it has blown up, and I guess that's thanks to the national team and how brilliantly they have done by getting to a couple of finals, by beating Australia, which everybody thought was almost impossible. And a lot more girls are deciding they want to take the game up. It must be starting to make your job a little bit easier, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad to have witnessed where women's cricket is now. I mean, we talk about it still being in a boom stages, but here, particularly in South Africa, I think, with our ambassadors, which is the Protea women, and them doing so well over the last two T20 World Cups, it definitely makes my job a lot more easier to scout and get talent through and find players, or well, actually not find players, they actually come to you technically. It's good for the game. It's good for South African women's cricket. We always talk about mass participation, and I suppose once you have that, competition amongst each other takes care of itself. And yeah, ideally, at the end of the day, when you go to an ICC event, you want to put a brand of cricket and a cultured team out there that says, there's something that's happening in this country, and it's not just to compete, but to win ICC events.
Dinesh, you obviously know the person I'm going to talk about right now in terms of his ability, but you certainly weren't around in 1992 when Jonty Rhodes dived like a society to run Inzamam ul Haq out. And I think that in South African cricket was the beginning of how our kids looked up at heroes. And when we created heroes, that's what wanted to get them into the game. In your case, who was it that you looked up to that made you want to get into the game?
Yeah, I kid you not, Jonty Rhodes was definitely one of them. If you talk about 1992, I was 6 years old at the time. And I started playing cricket after that, actually, But I was a big fan of Lance Klusener. I mean, at that time, I didn't know any female cricketer. I thought, junior Dinesha was the only female cricketer in the world playing cricket. So yeah, I mean, Jonty Rhodes definitely. Lance Klusener played a big part. I think I tried to mimic his bowling at one point. I think I bowled like that for 4 to 5 years. And then obviously, the revolution of technology happened. And, the likes of more recent cricketers like your Dale Steyn, AB de Villiers from a men's perspective. And then, yeah, I suppose through my cricketing journey, as soon as women's cricket was televised and I played against other international teams, always admired leadership skills of Meg Lanning, Charlotte Edwards. We've got some great custodians in Marizanne Cup. She was fantastic for South Africa, as well as Mignon du Preez. So, as the years went on, you got exposed to different types of role models or icons that you look up to. So, yeah, but it started back in the day there with Jonty Rhodes and Lance Klusener.
It's great to hear that because, I remember as the commentator of that particular event coming back to South Africa, I was amazed at how many ladies had tuned in at goodness knows what time of the morning back here in South Africa to actually watch those matches, and how after that, going to venues, commentating at venues for years after that, how the increase in the swing of what was like 90% men and then 10% women almost got to a point where there were more women in the ground than there were men in the ground. But at that time, it wasn't yet a game that ladies and girls were able to play. So from your point of view, when you actually started playing, like you said, you thought you were the only girl that actually played the game. It must have been really difficult to find 11 girls. I presume you, like a lot of girls, played in boys' teams.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's correct. I played most of my cricket with boys up until the age of 19, actually. And a twofold there. I think the game grew, and then girls did start want to get involved in the game, but it wasn't competitive at all. I had big dreams of playing for the Proteas, and so twofold. So one, the game did start to grow. So it took a lot of years to get there. And then one is that if there were teams around or club teams and that sort of stuff, the competitive level wasn't that great. But yeah, it's been a journey. I mean, I could probably write a book on how, on my perspective on how the game was at the time to where it is now. It's so beautiful to see, and obviously to know that you're part of what's happening in women's cricket at the moment now. It's sort of like give you goosebumps. Or while I'm speaking to you, it's giving me goosebumps. But it's been a tough journey, a challenging one, but definitely a worthwhile one.
Let's just talk a little bit more about your career. Right-hander, right arm medium, all-rounder. Lance Klusener, you've mentioned already. I mean, every one of us would love to have been able to play like Zulu and performed as well as he did, particularly in World Cup. But I guess the love of the game outweighs anything else that really has come between you and I guess what you impart now on the girls that you coach.
Yeah, look, my journey started. I actually was in love with soccer at the time.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was after that 1992 event that I said, no, I'm the only female. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to let other girls play cricket. And, we actually had a carpenter next door, and I didn't even know it was called a bat. So I just like told him what it's like, and he carved that out for me. We had chalk lines on the wall, taped up balls. That's how we started. Then my family moved to KZN. My father got into contact with actually Trisha Chetty's dad, and she was playing school cricket at the time, and that's how I got involved. And then, yeah, not so long ago, went up under 13 ranks, under 16 ranks, under 19 school cricket. And yeah, I got selected for South Africa when I was 17, so it was my matric year. And yeah, look, I started my career as a pace bowler. I didn't really bat. And my cricket, like, just sort of evolved. The more coaches you get exposed to, the more cricket you watch and read about. And then, yeah, I ended off my career as a top order bat and an off spinner. Yeah, I think there's a time where we played against Australia in 2016. We had to take the gloves for about 15 overs too. So,
Wow.
like it just ebbed and flowed. And I think the biggest thing with my career was that I wasn't exposed to what the ladies are sort of exposed to now. So when we talk about high performance, we're talking about nutrition, SNC, physiotherapy, we're talking about mental performance coaches. We weren't exposed to that. So we sort of like thought we were always like way in below all the other teams because there was so much structure and investment in those international teams that was happening years before us. So, I always gave my best. It was always my biggest pride on the international stage representing your country. And, for the bulk of my international career, you don't get paid for that. I went
Yeah.
studying, I've got 2 degrees with me at the moment, which I'm grateful for. That wouldn't have happened through cricket because obviously you get funded a bursary program. And now when I look at it, like there's so much things I wish I had done better as an athlete. And now with these girls that I coach now, the whole high performance structure in South Africa is that you have that resilient mindset. You beat all the odds to get where you are, regardless of people saying no, go be a doctor, go use your degree, be a lawyer. So I have that resilient side, but I also have the side of me that what if, and that's about me as a coach, not leaving any stone unturned with the girls and the resources that they have at the moment. So, it's not a journey I would change at all. A lot of people still ask me, but the game grew when you were there. You were contracted for 2 years. Sort of why did you leave so early? And I suppose like, sort of like when you transition into coaching and in life and you gain experience, I'm a very like purposeful person. Like philosophy is a big thing for me. And what coaching does, playing never gave me that there. So I suppose that's the conversation for another time. But yeah, like I said, it's not a journey that I would change anything at all, actually.
So would your friends say that Dinesha was a tomboy?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Because it
Look,
just sounds, I mean, you talk about you wanted to play football and you got next door and you got yourself a piece of plank and you played cricket. So what do you say? I mean, let's talk about the girls that you look after now. And we will talk about the under-19 team and the World Cup that's coming up and all the rest of it. But you look after the Women's National Academy. I guess it's a difficult question for me to ask because obviously I'm a male and you're a female. Girls that you coach are females, but your path to teenagehood into early adulthood as a female is so different to a male, and perhaps in your mid-20s or 30s girls want to go away and have a baby and start a family and then come back to the sport. I guess with the evolution of the likes of the Naomi Osakas and the tennis players in particular, the Serena Williams, they're proving that you can have a life as a female sports person.
no, yes, definitely. It has evolved so much. I can't even tell you, like, if I think about it, like now it's about, you working with young athletes, you're working with National Academy, which is probably about 19 to your 27 range. group of girls, and it's about balancing the lifestyle because, a lot of in high performance, what we speak about is not attaching your brand to your identity or your performances to your identity. And at the end of the day, we've got like a lot of workshops, educational stuff. Players are represented by SACA, which is obviously a association that takes care of their basic needs, investments, just how to manage money. So it evolved so much, and like you said, I mean, the athletes that you mentioned now, there is a space where the game is going where you can still have a feminine lifestyle. Yeah, the womanhood that comes
Yeah.
with being a woman and still operate in high pressure environments and we talk a lot about it's not just being cricket, but in life in general. And that's like obviously women empowerment. So,
Yeah.
like even now with Cricket South Africa, they had to change how they do contracting because contracting is fairly new in Cricket South Africa. I mean, domestically, we 2 years into professional cricket, and it's something that they've never had to deal with before. But if a female wants to start a family without them losing their contract, so everything is just evolving around the game, and I think it's only going to get completely like a lot better after this year. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's about identity. It's about respecting that. And at the end of the day, yeah, it's about winning World Cups. So it's definitely a balance on either end.
And I guess most importantly, and you did touch on it, the Saka and Andrew Bretsky and his organization, what they have done for the game in South Africa and now for women's cricket as well is something that I guess you didn't even dream of 15 years ago.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, I think when Saka was formed, it was actually towards the end of my career. And to get exposed to that sort of resources that they come with, and it's not just cricket, it's about life in general, financial planning, all of that. I mean, that's so crucial just in terms of being a person. So the fact that you can get that exposed at a cricket level or a sport level plays a massive role in helping these players make better choices, better decisions. And I suppose it also keeps in check at member level that you've got to protect human rights here. They're not a product. And I think that's what I love about it. And that helps so much in terms of the care factor, knowing that you can work in high performance, you can care for athletes, but it's not at the price of excellence, which is, I think it's fantastic.
And of course, the exposure that the girls are now getting on television, opportunities in Indian Premier Leagues, locally as well, albeit, let's say, truth be told, a lot can still be done to improve local cricket, but there's got to be a start point.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree with you more. I think about when these leagues started, and there wasn't much say about it. And I think it was Australia that started these leagues. And
Yeah.
year after year, you could just see this game growing from strength to strength. And then the 100 game, or actually at that time it was the Super League, England, and then it turned into the 100. WPL has been around for, I think, 2 seasons before that. They had a challenge. It's only a matter of time that, other countries are going to start developing those leagues. Well, we could say it's a lot of money, right? But from having nothing to that, it's a lot of money. And then you look at obviously the transparency between the men's game and the women's game. But I feel eventually the women's game and the commercial rights and the investment and the resources, endorsements, whatever that may be, will stand on its own eventually. And it will start with your bigger countries. I mean, if you look at India, I mean, their culture is just cricket. Their religion is cricket. And once you get that investment, I think women's cricket will stand on its own where both men's and cricket can become the cash cows of the game. And I mean, the opportunities and the life-changing moments at these leagues and even having a national contract can change for a woman cricketer now. It's something that was unheard of back in the day.
You're listening to the edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. We'll have more for you after these. Hi, I'm Louis Karpas. On the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room, we chat to Glen Rose Harbour, the Spa Women's Challenge champion. We'll find out how her career started, what she's up to. It's a wonderful story. That's the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. Glen Rose Harbour, 6 to 6:30 Central African Time. Join me then. Let's talk about how well the under-19 team have done and taking us forward and what we can expect from the girls and when's the next series of matches going to be.
Yeah, look, so post-World Cup, we just completed our reviews, each department, finding 1% where we can get better, how can we improve. Really, really chuffed, obviously, that we got to a final. Not so chuffed that we didn't win. But honestly, for me personally, it was a privilege losing that final. I think I wouldn't have been the coach I am right now, sitting here and talking to you. If that didn't happen, you just see things, you just come with a new profound mindset. You realize that you were just like one game away from winning the World Cup for this country. But in essence, we must be relevant as well. Under 19 cricket has been around for 3.5 years, and to make it to a
Yeah.
final, excellent, absolutely excellent. And if you look at those 4 finalist teams, England's got the 100. 9 of their players played in that 100 competition. The Australian team, every single player was part of a Big Bash team. And then same with the Indians. They were in WPL, and we saw them just participated now. That concluded. So lots of positives rather than negatives to take out of that World Cup. But like I said, now a new profound mindset. You understand what it's like at a final. You understand no one can ever tell you about it, no matter how many articles you read, or you can even be at a venue to watch a final. You won't really know what it takes unless you're in that dugout, preparing your warm-ups, talking to the girls. It was absolutely chaos in terms of our setup. A few players actually went through panic attacks. They couldn't make it. They couldn't breathe, that sort of stuff. So planning becomes a lot better now. As you can see, I started really early this year. We actually just concluded. Well, we've identified 50 girls around the country via our national weeks. We saw 25 this weekend. I'll see 25 again in April. We'll sort of trim that down. And then once we trim that down, I also want to do a roadshow around the country with all stakeholders, with selectors and different departments. We want to go around the country to see what's there. So competitively, we're looking to play cricket against other international teams at 2026. But for now, we got to understand what we have for this group, what's our shortfalls, develop a document. Is it suited to the brand of cricket? We're going to play Nepal, Bangladesh conditions. So a lot of planning, a lot of strategic work this year with still addressing skill sets. And then 2026, we're going to look to go overload on games, play as much cricket, get psychologists involved. Sort of the mental aspect of the game is so huge. And that word gets used so much in different environments. But the word I want to bring out is probably emotional intelligence, self-awareness, that I think we could have been better in the previous World Cup, which would have helped us in that final. So sort of take the positives, take the things that worked into this group, but add new dimensions to make sure that we're still giving the girls the best opportunity to go compete at a World Cup and win it.
I mean, I think if people need reminding, Malaysia World Cup final playing against India, and what I took out of that tournament, and I'm sure was extremely difficult for you after the event, was the emotions that the girls went through. And we were so proud of them. We were so proud of how well they had done. But it kind of like looked at, for some of them in particular, at the age, their young age, that the world had come to an end. I mean, how did you pick them up at the end of that? I mean, they did so well. To get to a final and to arguably lose to, the best cricketing nation in the world, men and women at the moment, outside of Australia, perhaps, in terms of women's cricket, the achievement that was fantastic, but they just looked so down and out. How did you pick them up?
Yeah, no, there's twofold to this. One, it's so good to feel that emotion at that age, because imagine the type of mindset you can develop when you play for the national side. And having to know that you've been through this before and you don't get to experience it when you're 24, 25, 26. The tough part was, yes, how do I get them back and keep them positive or more hungry and understand how do we, like what we did was technically you won for South Africa, And it was quite simple, actually. You just sort of lay out the map of where we started, what we were up against. That same thing, so we've had a slide of where men's cricket's been around. This is how many times they got into a final. The women's cricket national team has been around. This is when they got into a final. Look at you guys. And I think that's where it just switched. And they're like, that's like, you just got to give them perspective of the positive stuff. And it's not to neglect that. I think for 2 years, as girls spoke about winning a World Cup, or 18 months, they spoke about everything I do today. Is it leading me to be a World Cup winner? So rightly so, they felt the pain. But right now, if I look at how they're doing domestically, I can firmly say that, they sort of still there at the back of their mind, but probably the same chat we had, because we got together after the World Cup after a month and just had to chat to each other to say, how's your mindset? And like everyone that's been part of that final, it's just in a different space now. So
how many of those girls will go through? I mean, I don't know all the ages of the girls, but I guess you will lose a few of those girls to the national team over the next couple of months and year or so.
We lose quite a bit, a chunk. We actually came in with 7 returning, and 7 goes out. So the thing about that is that 7 was in the playing 11 all the time. So we do have a lot of work in these two groups. I do believe that could possibly see From the 2023 group to the 2025 group, we could see about 4 to 5 players in that national team very, very soon. I especially need to put plans into place of the other girls that was involved, because I really don't want them to get lost in the system. Make sure they're taken care of. They're playing competitive cricket, because everyone's journey is different. Some might get in there earlier, some might get in there later. It's just, like I said, with that care factor, put a plan in place with them to know that to go to a World Cup it's the real investment, it's the experience you have that can really help not just yourself, but the country to win World Cup and be your next, I suppose, Australia in the women's space to dominate women's cricket.
Let's just talk globally, if we may, for a short while, because I guess the stronger the game is globally, the better it is for each country. And I think what was so encouraging for me was to see girls from the likes of Nepal, Samoa, even Ireland to a lesser extent, and the hosts at the time, Malaysia, playing the game. It must be a great boost for women's cricket around the world to be able to put 16 teams together in a tournament like this.
Absolutely massive. I tell you what, I might not be involved in coaching at the time that, we see what the fruits of this year. If we take the previous World Cup as well, I mean, the likes of Rwanda and Zimbabwe was there. So globally, girls are playing cricket. And I think what people fail to realize is because we see the standard of international cricket or your test nation, playing nations, we sort of benchmark it. And I think that's such a wrong perspective to look at it. Because if you look at the countries that you just mentioned now, I mean, if they just planted a seed, we know how long trees take to grow. But the fact that they started at that age and at that level and being exposed to the things, I mean, when I was 15, I thought I was the only female playing cricket. So can you imagine what that does, globally? And when we talk globally, we talk about a lot more resources. And sometimes that's not only financial resources, but just to get the sport going. I mean, I know that the most competitive or most watched sport right now is football and soccer, but cricket can stand on its own at that level if we get all these other countries involved, because I see it this way: the more people, the more involvement, more ideas, more investment, more about how can we get better, how do we have the competitive advantage than the next country. So the key there is obviously to have the right stakeholders at each country. But what a fantastic initiative from ICC as well, just the way they ran the under-19 setup to get these countries involved. I thought was absolutely, it was brilliant.
Yeah, I failed to mention, and I apologize to the people listening to us in Nigeria. Of course, they also had a team, unlike their men who don't necessarily have anything like ladies cricket in Nigeria. How do we encourage other African countries to start playing the game? I mean, obviously Zimbabwe and Namibia and others that are traditionally cricketing nations that have men's teams. How do we encourage those? I mean, even Kenya have had a great team in years gone by.
Yeah, look, I actually was involved in an event for that. It was the same under-19 African qualifiers. And there's actually quite a few countries that's playing. So they had to win their region first, each country, or they broke down Africa in certain parts.
Yeah.
And they had to qualify to get to a qualifier, which was fantastic. I mean, like Malawi was a team there. You had Uganda there, your Kenyas, yes, you mentioned. It was so good to see. And Tanzania was there. So the fact that they had this tournament and girls cricket, it's a thing, right? I believe what Nigeria has done for Africa was excellent. What Zimbabwe is doing for Africa is really good. So I don't think it's about how can we get them more involved. It's just the investment that we put into these African countries is to say, are we taking care of it? And I wouldn't be surprised if there'll be more African countries where the women do a bit better than the men's team.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the sport. But yeah, so I wouldn't say there's not much more to do. It's just we need buy-in. And for me, all depends on at a member level or stakeholders. How passionate are you about getting this? Do you see the vision long term? And you might not be part of that vision, but can you start something and follow through with it? And hopefully the next person that comes on has that same vision as you. And I suppose that's what it's about.
I guess the disadvantage that cricket has, unlike the other sports, is you need a field, you need a pitch, you need an oval, and it's not like like a game of football or an athlete can run on the road and you can do the Comrades Marathon. You don't need a venue per se. With cricket, you actually need facilities, and I guess you're fighting for that school field against the boys' team first, and you're fighting to play at Kingsmead against the Dolphins first. So it must be really difficult for that as well.
Yeah, look, I think South Africa, they've developed quite a bit now. So now what the men get domestically, the women get in terms of facilities, which is excellent. It's just about planning your schedule. But if I look at Africa in general, that you are 100% right. I mean, there's some countries that just has one field in the whole country.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So facilities play a massive role in that. I don't think it should be the deciding factor. I do think that there are other ways to it. But I mean, if we talk in our ICC events, then yes, it becomes a big thing. And not to mention equipment. Cricket equipment is very, very expensive. And we talk about tools of trade. I mean, if you, especially like you go to an African country, I mean, a pair of spikes is probably a month's salary at some people's home.
Yeah.
So there is that disparity, that you have to tackle in. But I'm a firm believer, and I tell this to my athletes, if you have this dream, the only thing that kills a dream is yourself. So it's always about, finding ways, this and that there. And we just hope that in God's will, that the game in Africa and probably South Africa could be in a better state. But it goes back to me, it's the team effort, it's the country's effort. How bad do you want to do this?
I always had great hope and encouragement for women's cricket in South Africa and how well they've done. But this half an hour of chatting to you has given me so much more hope. I am so glad that there's somebody like you who thinks like you do, who has a vision like you have for ladies in this country to participate in the sport that we all love. Dinesha, thank you so very much for just being Dinesha and putting back into the sport that clearly you fell in love with at the age of 6. And thank goodness soccer didn't grab you and cricket did. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your kind sentiments, Louis. It was a pleasure talking to you. I didn't even realize the time, so that's always a good sign. Yeah, and hopefully to be on the podcast very soon again. But thank you so much for your well wishes.
Absolutely. You are welcome anytime you like, and bring along a couple of the players as well. That's Dinesha Devnarain, who is looking after not only our Women's National Academy as the head coach there, but also our under-19 head coach. What a wonderful lady, and thank you so much for your time on the program tonight. That's tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. Yes, I bet you also can't believe you've been listening to us for over half an hour. We will be back with more every night, 6 to 6:30 Central African time. As I end every program, be nice to each other. Until next time, bye for now.